I started drawing when I was really, really young, right? So it's like it's always been a thing for me. Elementary school, I was just drawing all the time and stuff. So I think at an early age, I knew that I wanted something to do with that. I just wasn't sure at that point. But you know what? I was drawing like lots of comics, right? Like superheroes, that type of thing. And it wasn't until there was a kid in the neighborhood who they got like just the worst mini bike that never, right? I mean, it was just a pile of crap. And I just remember, the first time that they let me write it, this is in elementary school, and I was just hooked after that, right? I mean, it was such a humble beginning because it was just the worst. I don't even know what brand it was. It just never ran, but when it did, it was magic, right? Especially for a kid and stuff. So after that, I just kind of knew that it was always something that I wanted to pursue. Now, I come from a very traditional Asian family, and my parents basically told me if I got a motorcycle, they disown me. I called it bluff, and they haven't
I
disowned me
feel
yet,
that.
right? Like, because I feel like there are two types of motorcyclists. I feel like you either grow up in a motorcycle family or you grow up in one where it's like just you are not allowed to do it, but you figure out a way to do it anyway. And I'm more of the latter. So at
Exactly.
a certain point, I just sort of figured out that, really I wanted to do the combination of the two.
How old were you when you realized that you wanted to put the two together?
Uh, it's hard to pinpoint like a specific time, but I just know that in high school, I remember I was taking AP studio art, and it's like for my portfolio, I really wanted to do, a series of motorcycles and stuff. I was doing a bunch of motorcycle illustrations at that point. I was just really into it, but it just didn't really sound like, my family was really they just weren't thrilled with that idea. And so, instead I went to college and I went to study computer science. I actually worked, for a while in that industry, but there came a point where I just remember I'd started this new job. Um, I was actually working for my dad's friend, and maybe a month into it, I'm like, I cannot do this. And man, I was already in like my early 20s when I kind of came to this decision. I just said, I cannot do this. I got to go chase like, what is meaningful to me. My parents, they wanted a doctor, a lawyer, or like an engineer or something like that, right? So I was just being the dutiful son. But I tried it, and it just wasn't really my thing, right? And I could just sort of tell that like that's not the life that I wanted for myself. So, um, I think that there's some people who can sort of just grind through stuff like that, and I'm just not one, right? So I really had to go through and chase something that I was passionate about. So then I marched into the office. I told him, I can't do this. It was like a month. Uh, and then after that, I went back to school. Um, I went to a private school here in Southern California. And then after that, my first job was actually, let me go back. My internship was with GK Design, which does like the Yamaha bikes and stuff. And then my first job out of college was Suzuki. Then I went to Polaris, then Kawasaki in Japan, and then I've been with Piaggio now for almost 6 years.
So you're living your dream. How does that
Yeah,
how does that feel?
uh, it's super cool. Don't get me wrong. Like I think it's just one of those things where it's as much as I love it, it is still work, right? So it's
Yeah,
like it can be like a bit of a grind and stuff. But I mean, I wouldn't want to do anything else, right?
yeah,
So the combination of the two. I mean, I'm the type of guy that like. I mean, I like cars, but I don't geek out about them, right? Like, and that's I went to school. I went to this private school in Southern California called the Art Center,
hmm,
and it's known for producing a bunch of famous car designers and stuff. And when I was at school, I could tell that I was just different from the other guys because they would just go and check out any car, right? And I just didn't care, right? I mean, I'm like, oh, that's fine, that's cool, but even if some crappy bike like puts across the street and stuff, I'm like, oh, what is that? It's like, does he have any mods on it? Like, I just want to run up there and just kind of ask him. It's like, dude, like, what'd you do to it? So it was just different. I could just tell where my passions, lie, and that's what I chased. Motorcycles kind of cool because the teams are a lot smaller, and so you have a lot more ownership over it. Doesn't mean that you have total ownership over it, but like you know, you play a bigger role in it for sure, right?
And
So
you like that?
I do. You know, it's a lot of stress because you know, in the end, you know, if something doesn't work out, it's on you, right? But at the same time, you know, it's I think there's something about like having that vision, having that dream, and having that actually come across, right? Seeing it on the road, right? So it's something special to be able to see that, and I think that you know, I'm sure the car guys love their job and stuff too, but like to kind of have it, you know, change so much during that process, you know, it's got to be at least a little bit disheartening, right?
Yeah.
So to me, I prefer it would be disheartening to me. I will say that.
Who were your design heroes in the motorcycle world or anywhere in the design world? Folks that like inspired you or made you think differently about what design is or what design could be.
Well, I'm actually I'm pretty lucky in that I get to work with someone that I really, really admired in college, Miguel Galuzzi. So that
Okay,
was actually like a really, you know, it's a big honor for me to be able to work in the same studio as Miguel.
sure. So who inspired you early on?
Okay, I would say early on, you know, a person who now caveat, this is not a designer, but just his spirit, Soichiro Honda, right, was a really, really big influence for me just because I felt like, you know, when I was a kid, those guys just, you know, nothing seemed impossible for that company, right? Um, I remember when I was young, I saw an R750 and that changed me, right? I mean, that bike, uh, you know, I think to be honest, that actually might be the thing that turned me onto motorcycle design, where I saw that and I'm just like, I think that's it. I think that is it.
Which bike was that?
NR 750.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
the oval pistons and
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just, you know, the undertail exhaust and stuff. And like, you know, it had that mirrored windscreen and being able to see like the carbon in it and stuff. It was pretty amazing, especially back then. Right. So, um, I would say that was a big influence. Now, maybe not so much motorcycle specifically, but I watched a lot of anime as a kid. I mean, being Japanese American, I had the opportunity to watch a lot of anime growing up because that's just what, you know, people would give us as presents when they come to visit in America and stuff. So Akira, you know, I will not lie, had a big, big influence, but also there's a season in Robotech that has like these they're called cyclones that you would write it and they would transform into an armor suit around you. If you haven't seen the Robotech cyclones,
I'll
those
have to
are
look
awesome.
for it. I'll have
Yeah.
to look for that. Oh wow, that sounds cool.
Another person that's had a large influence in my life is actually my last gig when I was working in Japan for Kawasaki. You know, we had a design director over there, Fukumoto-san, and uh, I have to throw my respect out to him because this is a guy that he when he was young, I think he was a teenager, he, you know, had an accident and stuff like that, and he lost the use of his right arm, and that was his dominant hand, and that's what he was drawing with, and he took that summer, and you know, this is a devastating injury to any kind of, you know, artist or designer, and he took the summer and he taught himself how to draw with his other hand. And then for a guy like him to rise up to be a design director at a company like Kawasaki is, I don't know, it's like that guy is gritty, you know, and anytime that I'm feeling like, you know, I'm at, you know, the end of a, you know, my effort is this is how much I have. I just kind of think about, you know, the people who had it a little bit harder, right? Or a lot harder, right? And I think about Fukumoto-san, and it honestly helps me push harder, right? Because I'm like, man, that guy is gritty, and I do not want to disappoint him, right? So I mean, this is later in life, but he's definitely been a big inspiration to me, like ever since I've worked at Kawasaki, and I'll carry that forever. But I have an insane amount of respect for that man, you know, and I always will, always. Yeah. So Tuono, it was a interesting project, you know, because I think the 210 itself, the customer base was sort of changing a little bit. It was very much like a hooligan bike, but then you're starting to see more and more people using it for like sport touring purposes and stuff. So it kind of like, its target market kind of split into two, if you will. So we have like the base model that's a little bit more for the sport touring, and then you have the factory version that is, a little bit more for the hooligan type riding and stuff. But basically, it was just kind of going in there and just trying to continue on what they had already laid down. Because I think with a lot of design, it's not so much about doing something completely new every single time, but sort of carrying on like the tradition of what people want, right? So we wanted to look a little bit more like the influence from MotoGP with like the new aerodynamic features and stuff, and trying to integrate those. It was kind of a little bit earlier on, and so we tried to do more like internal winglets but we kind of use them more for like comfort reasons and stuff. But just trying to get something that had like different. It still sort of vibed with a customer, but in a fresh way. So I did bring a little bit of my own identity into it. I mean, when I was designing it, I did think a lot about, what are the things that, I want to say as like a designer and stuff. So, even like little things. I mean, the first version we had the winglets that were red on the inside and stuff. And I looked a lot at when I was living in Japan previously. I looked a lot at Japanese lacquerware. It's like they have like this beautiful lacquerware that had like the red bowl with the interior and stuff. And so I just said, I always thought that was something that was such a beautiful touch. And so I thought I'd just try to throw that in there as well. But just sort of drawing from all these different inspirations in my life and trying to bring together something that was cohesive, right? That still said Tuono, right? But like putting in the new like aero features and also putting in, just a little bit of me as a designer in there.
Like an Easter egg.
Yeah, something like that. Right?
That's awesome. Very, very cool. So how many people does it take? What's the process like? I'm thinking about from the perspective of a young person who's into design and into motorcycles. Give them some insight into what it takes to design Tuono.
I would say, drawing, sketching is still such a big part of it, right? I mean, we still do so much drawing, and so if you're really interested in, any kind of career in transportation design, uh, drawing is still the fastest, the most efficient way of getting an idea across, right? So even in this age of VR and of AI, uh, you know, drawing is still that fastest connection between, you and like say an engineer, right? So we usually start with a lot of design sketches. So we'll start with ideation. We'll start exploring like a bunch of different themes, and then we'll start narrowing them down. We'll talk to the engineers, we'll talk to the marketing team, get their 2 cents on it. Make sure that whatever we're building is like in the realm of reality. And as soon as we sort of narrow down to a single design, then we might take that, refine it. We'll take it from 2D to 3D. And so we either go to virtual, where we do something like 3D model on the screen, or with some companies, they're all a little bit different. That's actually one thing that's kind of crazy, is that I've worked with American and Japanese and European companies, and they all have actually a little bit different process, right? With some companies, we go directly from sketches to clay, right? And that's still a really, really big thing. I mean, I know a lot of people think with virtual reality tools that we don't really need clay, but it's really hard to get some of the ergonomic checks when you don't have something physical. You can still do it, but it just becomes, you have to be very, very diligent about checking some of those things if you're just going to 3D. Some other companies, like with Piaggio, we have a very, very digital process, right? So these guys are really trying to push the limit of what we can do with motorcycle design as far as like digital design. And so we go a little bit earlier into 3D, and we sort of carry that on like a little bit further down the road. Whereas some of the other companies that I've worked with, they're a little bit more analog, right? So then, from there we take it, and it's a lot of back and forth with engineering and stuff, right? So it's like you get into these arguments, you kind of have like, you have to push and pull, give and take, right? And a lot of what we do is just sort of negotiation with, like, say, engineering and the people who are in charge of the budgets and stuff. So I know it sounds a little bit less fun, but this is really where the magic happens, right? Like, if there's a part of it where it's like you have to be good at sketching, right? You have to be good at these other things, but you also have to be really good at negotiating, right, for the things that you really want to keep inside of your bike, because you're not going to be able to keep every single feature that you want, right? There's just limits to it and stuff. But I think having good people skills is also really important if you want to be a designer, because you're always working with a team. So there might be, a couple, two, three designers working on a project, one lead, and then other people who are sort of supporting. You might have like a CAD modeler or two helping with a 3D model. If you are working with a clay team, maybe like one clay modeler for a bike. And then you might be working with, a team of like 20 engineers, right? And so, and then there's other people who, kind of help with other things, like, people who negotiate with the suppliers. And then you have other people who, the marketing team, they do like try to push the direction of the design a bit. And, there are a lot of people who are actually involved in the design of a motorcycle. There are so many roles that are involved in producing a bike, right? So whether it's designer, engineer, if you're an accountant, there's product planning as well, right? And uh, the purchasing guys, they do a lot of work for us, right? So these companies are large. These bikes, we're selling them globally, so there's going to be a lot of people who are involved. So if you really want to be involved with the process of building a motorcycle, there are just so many opportunities.
Okay. And then if you're in your advice, it sounds like right now, if you're coming in from the design side, um, make sure your drafting skills are up to snuff, because that seems like it still is the way to, like you said, connect your brain to an idea.
Yeah, like if you're good at sketching, learn how to draw in perspective, right? Especially, like, don't be scared to draw something difficult, right? So just always challenge yourself just to be improving your sketching skills. But I mean, I'm struggling to think of a designer that I know that doesn't have decent drawing skills, right? It really is just a requirement if you want to be in the design side. So if you're really interested in it, really focus on that, because the other things are not as hard to learn, in my opinion, right? But the flip side, uh, I'll hear kids say things like, I wasn't born a great artist, or I wasn't. These are not, like, sketching itself. Drawing it's just a muscle memory, right? It's a skill. It's not something that you're born with. Like, I was not born, with sketching skills. And really, if you just practice, it's something that everybody can learn, right? But, like, I feel like some people treat it like it's some uh, genetic or something, and I
Mhm.
assure you, it is not.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're
I mean, there are some people that
practicing.
I've met that seem to have some natural gift, but that doesn't mean that people can't learn how to convey their ideas with a sketch by practice,
I would
repeatedly.
say I would say that hard work is will trump that every single time, right? Like, when I went to school, I mean, I saw so many cases where the kids that were the most talented in the first term, right, were easily surpassed by, like, the fourth term in school, by these kids that were outworking them. So if you really want to learn how to sketch, it's really about hard work.
So I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Um, what's a dream design project for you? Or maybe another way of putting it, if there's one motorcycle that you'd like to be like told or asked to design the next generation of, what might that be?
I think for me, I would love to do something that's a little bit more new ground up, right? So motorcycles haven't really changed that much in the last, like, 3, 4 decades and stuff. And we saw a lot more experimentation early. I should mention that, when I was a kid, I remember seeing some of those elf racing bikes, right? And those were actually a pretty big influence on me too, because they had things like the funny front ends, and it's like they just seem like they're a lot more willing to experiment with the packaging of a motorcycle and stuff. So I would love the opportunity to work on something that's just ground up, just different, right? Because it's especially now with electric, you know, I know it's going through its ups and downs and stuff, but I mean, with electric, to me, I see that package as an opportunity. Like we don't have to just take a gas bike, drop the electric stuff, and then or drop the gas engine and throw in like a electric motor and just call it done, right? Like the packages were built for gas bikes, right? And I just kind of wonder if there's an opportunity there, right, to do something different with electric. So
Yeah.
I think something like that could be really, really interesting. But I mean, I won't lie. Like when I was in school, like my dream was to do the Tuono and to work with Miguel. So it's like
Wow.
it. I'm super lucky that way. Super lucky.